it seems like it's been a bit, but it is time for Over the Rainbow. How are you, Sharon Yankovic?
Oh, that's good. You've been missing you, and I'm glad we're back on track.
Well, the elections took a lot of my energy.
I tell you, we squeezed it out in the Senate. I'm very relieved.
It's the whole world is looking a lot brighter. But we're not doing politics on Over the Rainbow.
No, we're
We are
not.
celebrating those who have passed, those who have made an impact, those who should have made an impact. And our first feature today is, and I frankly was surprised at the outpouring and publicity that this received.
Me too.
Leslie
Me too.
Jordan.
Yeah.
I knew who he was, but I didn't think he was as prominent a star, a Hollywood presence as the publicity after his sudden
I
death
agree.
made.
I agree. I first was acquainted with him in Will and Grace, but he's been around. He's been around.
Yeah, and his story. Now, the first, currently, the first bunch of times I saw him, at first I thought it was Henry Gibson from Laughing.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about that. Yes.
But,
same kind of height and stature, kind of glib. He's got a very interesting voice. Like you almost don't need to see him. He's got one of those unique voices. Like he showed up in a part on Frasier, and a lot of times, like, I sort of listen to Frasier when I'm sleeping. I don't look, and when I heard his voice, I turned around and I'm like, yep, there he is. Very, very recognizable.
Yeah.
When I read the article, I really didn't know, like, from his beginning. He wrote a book about, I guess, how he started. So in the article I read, I figured, let me lead off with this quote because I kind of liked it. So it says, what he lacked in height, he made up for in generosity. He was an actor and comedian and the author of his book, My Trip Down the Pink Carpet. And the description of the book by his publisher was, he boarded a Greyhound bus bound for LA with $1,200 sewn into his underpants and never looked back. And when you kind of see him in your mind's eye, it's very fitting.
Well, yeah, I mean, the fact that he grew up in the South in a deeply religious home, being 4'11", and knowing he was gay his whole life and open about it in a culture that
wasn't
really
ready
didn't
for
embrace it.
Yeah.
It is pretty remarkable. And he did not run away from it throughout his life in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I also did not realize until I read the article that he had a bit of a drug problem. He went to jail for it. The one thing that I read in the article was people had asked, he'd been sober for more than 20 years, and people asked him, how did you do that? And his quote was, he said to people, well, 120 days in the jail in Los Angeles, that will sober you up. I had no idea that he had done jail time.
What I found interesting about you talked about his arrival in LA. He was in LA 4 years before he got his first acting gig. So right. I'm not sure exactly what he had in mind when he first decided to get on the bus and go to LA, or was he looking for a place where, he'd be more culturally accepted?
But right. Well, definitely LA
like
was
came to LA to become an actor, because it took him 4 years before he got a gig.
Well, he was probably thinking stand-up comedy on the way out there, and maybe fell into a gig. I knew he was on Designing Women. I wasn't a big fan of that show. I did not know he did The Fall Guy, so that was interesting. Mostly, I know that he did Will and Grace and Call Me Kat, but I also learned that he appeared in the American Horror Story and something called The Cool Kids.
Wait a second, wait a
Um,
second. Go back to Designing Women a minute, because I actually
mhm.
thought that's where I had first seen him, but then
Yeah,
I don't I didn't see that in any of the, I didn't see that in his credits, and I'm looking
it
now.
was. Yeah, I saw it.
I'm
Yeah,
looking and
and I don't remember. Is The Fall Guy an animated series
no,
or?
Fall Guy was with who was it that Lee who was it that was married to Farrah Fawcett Major? Lee Majors, but who was
Oh,
it?
that's right. Oh, now I
And he was a
remember the
stunt man.
show, but I
He
don't
was a,
remember him on it.
oh, I did. He
Yeah,
had a whole.
and
It was a
what about the
parade.
Cool Kids? Do you know anything about that show?
On what show?
The Cool Kids. It said he appeared. I mean, everybody knows the American Horror Story, but I never heard of the Cool Kids.
No, he had, but he had appearances on a whole bunch of things. See, I
Yeah,
am
no, I
not
didn't.
seeing Designing Women here, and I thought I
You want me to send you the article I read?
yeah, because I'm looking at maybe I'm looking at his filmography and
And
TV.
that's why we have different resources. Yours are usually better than mine, but it was definitely there.
I mean, I thought he was. I was sure he was, and I see he was
Yeah, as a matter
in
of
the Burt
fact,
Reynolds. There was a Burt Reynolds sitcom, I think it was.
yeah,
That was, I
and
think, maybe spun off from that.
right, and in fact, they left off in the credits that I read. They left off "Call Me Cat," but that was obvious because that was his last show. So
Well, he was that was probably his most regular part was Call Me Cat. Call Me
yeah,
Cat.
I like her, but when I watched the show in the beginning
Or
when it was on local TV, it just felt to me like the show was missing something, and so I dropped it. And then
There's
I
in
thought it
Hearts
went
of
off.
Fire, and that I
Yeah,
think
then
spun off from Designing Women, but
maybe.
I don't
No,
see.
it said
Okay,
no, it said Designing Women, but like I don't remember that show. I haven't really. I saw it here and there. I never really cared for it. I did watch The Fall Guy though. I've forgotten about it. Um, and like I said, I watched maybe half a season of Call Me Cat, and then I thought it was off the air. I recently discovered it's streaming, but I wasn't interested enough to go find it. So he's
actually, I
been
believe
there.
it's
So
now in its third season.
yeah,
Which surprised, I didn't
yeah,
think it was going to make it. It's cute enough, and it
eh,
does.
yeah,
It sometimes gets a little edgier than I would have expected, which I think it would be better if it focused more on that. But that's neither here nor there.
right.
Uh, now the other thing that he has done, and it's interesting because you mentioned the book and the
Yeah,
I believe the book came out like last year, and he did a one man show like 2 years ago,
uh-huh.
and it's almost like he did these things to tie a bow, around his life. The one man show about his life, the book about his life, and this all
Right.
happened in the last 2 years
I don't know.
before he died.
I think that just comes from the fact that um, gay the gay and lesbian community is so much has really come a long way and is much more accepted that he felt ready to bring that sort of entertainment out
No,
and
I'm just
it would
surprised that he did it so close to his death. That he did
you think it's coincidental.
the
I
other.
mean I mean he died from a car accident, so
Well,
yeah,
they
and
think he
only
had. They're
67.
pretty sure. They're pretty sure he had what they've described as a medical incident that led
Oh,
to the accident.
I did not read
They,
that.
they
Okay.
didn't
I
specify
believe there
why.
was
No,
an
all the news
accident.
reports have had
Yeah,
that, whether it was
he
a
was
heart attack or something.
right. He was 67 years old. So still in these days and ages, that's still relatively young. Yeah, but that's all I had, that it was a car accident. My article didn't go into details.
It was also interesting that during the pandemic, the COVID-19,
Hmm.
he developed an entire new following. He had 5.8 million Instagram
That
followers.
must be where where the fame is coming from. That we both seem to be astonished that his celebrity,
No, I
it
don't think
must.
so. I mean, that was a more recent novelty aspect of it. He was
Right.
astounded because he's not in the Instagram demographic per se, age wise, and
Hmm.
I didn't watch any of them, but from what I gathered, they were more or less just observations and things during his day, especially while most of us were all shut down, including him, and he was just doing these little snippets that just got a tremendous following and almost made him. You're right; it did make him a bigger star, perhaps, but
Yeah.
Well, shit. What are y'all doing? This is awful. It's still March. How many days in March? When is April gonna fucking get here? What? My mother holding up the steps asking me who I'm talking to. I'm talking to my friends. Mama, quit bothering me. How much more of this can I take? Well, shit.
and what I also found interesting, he did a whole series of things in Britain, in England on
England.
BBC. Celebrity Big Brother in England. He was in a British sitcom. He had a part in a British TV drama, Living the Dream. A whole series of things in Britain, and I'm not sure where that comes from per se. Now, he also had his own start in the Fox sitcom. Oh, you were mentioning the Cool Kids, and I was surprised that I'm not really familiar with the Cool Kids because it was him, Martin Mull, Vicki Lawrence, and David Allen Greer. That's a pretty good lineup. And
It
I'm
is. Yeah.
surprised I wasn't aware of the Cool Kids.
Was the show a British show? That's something
No,
that.
no, that was Fox. That was Fox.
How about that?
Yeah, here I'm just seeing. He moved to Los Angeles in 1982, where he became involved in drugs and alcohol. Was arrested several times, and now let's go to his filmography. His first movie role was in 1988. His first TV role was in 1986. So he got to LA in 82 and didn't have his first TV part for 4 years.
What was he doing during that time?
Oh no.
Doesn't say.
Aside from drugs, alcohol, and getting arrested several times.
Right.
But anyway, Leslie Jordan, and I guess
made
he's
his
going to
mark.
be missed.
Yeah, he made his mark, and he seemed to be very appreciated by fellow actors.
Yeah. That really says it. That says it. Anything more on Leslie Jordan?
No, we can move on to Jerry Lee Lewis. Hey, did you know his nickname was the Killer?
Oh yeah.
I did
Yeah.
not know that. I did
I
know that he's sort of the pioneer of rockabilly music, which I love. And they say he was rock and roll's first great wild man. Woo!
And reading the stuff. Now, first of all, I had thought he died a long time ago.
No, I didn't think he died, but I thought he was sort of one of these people who faded from the scene, who was sort of, just reclusive,
And actually looking at his bio,
he actually was working. He was actually working. I didn't know. Well, So, I mean, I started off my notes with, that there are just too many songs to list a lot of, but, obviously the most famous of his songs was A Whole Lot of Shaking Going On and Great Balls of Fire.
Kisses, baby. Feels good. Hold me, baby. Well, I want to love you like I love a should. You're fine, so kind. I do tell this world that you're mine. I choose my nails and then I twiddle my thumb. I'm real nervous, but it sure is fun. Come on, baby. It drives me crazy. And this groove is just great balls of fire.
Now,
Which
now
I
I
played
have to
often.
confess,
Yeah.
and maybe it's why I thought he had died. I was not mixing him up with, but I was putting him together with Bill Haley and the Comets, sort of. I
Oh,
thought 1
no.
o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock rock was
Yeah,
there.
no. It's a different era.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had a lot of requests for his songs when I was DJing. I figured, you got to pick one song or another. When you do editing, it's going to make it hard for you to choose. So, he has had some more, I don't know, more, how do I want to put it? There were times where he was a little more in public life, like the limelight, and then he would fade and then he would reinvent himself and come back. So like I was reading, after he was like on top for a while, he like faded and then he came back with country music. Excuse me, I had no idea he did country.
Well,
But like as I was reading along, he actually had like 10 or so hits, like #1 country hits, which included To Make Love Sweeter for You, There Must Be More to Love Than This, Would You Take Another Chance on Me, and Me and Bobby McGee, which I love that song, but I didn't know that song had anything to do with him, and it's making me crazy because I'm hearing a female voice in my
Janis Joplin.
who
Janis
was
Joplin.
it?
Oh, yeah.
And I couldn't figure out who it was, but yeah. So I was associating the song totally with a different artist.
Well, he was very closely associated with people like Elvis Presley and Carl Perkins and Roy Orbison, who had country and rock in
That's true.
in their DNA. So that was and Johnny Cash. Don't forget Johnny Cash.
Right.
So, his country links were not that surprising, but
He also
often. We've seen this in several of our features. He was related to Mickey Gilley. He was related to Jimmy Swaggart.
And yes, and he toured in Europe with Chuck Berry and Little Richard.
Which I found interesting. Again, Chuck Berry and Little Richard are icons in a class of music.
Totally different.
And then you've got
totally
Elvis
different.
and Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash.
Yes,
who are icons in a different kind of music. And he was significant in each of those worlds.
And the midnight ramblers, this train don't care no gamblers, this train. You know this train don't care no jokers, this train. This old train, it don't care no jokers, this train. This old train, it don't care no jokers, no high-tone women, them cigar smokers, this train. I'm talking about God's train. Yeah.
Yeah, and did you know he played only one time, but he played for the Grand Ole Opry in January 20th of 1973. It was his one and only appearance. For some reason, he didn't get along well over there, but he made the one time, amazing show.
I think that was especially satisfying to him because when he first tried to break into the music world, he
they
went to
wouldn't take
Nashville.
him.
He went to the Grand Ole Opry and they shot him down.
Yep.
So for him to make his appearance at the Grand Ole Opry, and
It was like, take that, and now I'm gone.
yeah, yeah. Now he also touches one of my other favorite references when I say he was married for like 60 or 70 years. Now,
Yeah.
the difference being he was married to 7 different women, but through his life, he was married for about 60 or 70 years of his life.
That kind of goes into like one part of my notes
That
here.
almost killed the part that almost killed his career.
No, I was going to say on October 27, 2020, he celebrated his 85th birthday, live streamed on air on YouTube and Facebook and his official website. I had no idea you could even do like 3 different streams like that. And the whole live stream special had a whole lot of celebrating, as the article said. There were appearances from Willie Nelson, Elton John, Mike Love, Priscilla Presley, Joe Walsh, and you know who, and John Stamos was the host.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I saw that. But to go back to his marriages, he married, his third marriage was to his 13-year-old first cousin once removed when he was, I think, 21 or 22. And that really made him something of a pariah for many labels.
I would say so. I did not read that.
Oh, yeah. It was one of the things he was most noted for. I was also surprised at the level of tragedy associated with life. He had, I think it was 6 kids, but at least two of them died before he did. One of his sons died in a swimming pool accident when he was 3. Another died of a drug overdose, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
Several of his wives, matter of fact, one of his wives died in drowning in a swimming pool, and at least one of them, he was suspected. Oh, let's see. Yeah, this one. His 5th marriage to Sean Stevens lasted 77 days, ending with her death from an overdose of methadone. One journalist alleged that he may have abused and killed her. He was never.
I don't know why I'm having visions of Natalie Wood.
Yeah. You know, he did have several tragedies in his life along those lines. Did you see the episode with his arrest outside Graceland?
No.
Apparently, he was supposed, Elvis Presley wanted him to come over or talk to him or something, and he went out and he got drunk one night, and then he remembered he was supposed to go to Elvis Presley, and he grabbed a bottle of champagne, and he had a gun in the car, and he crashed into the gate or something like that, between the gun and the loaded gun on the dash. Police were called. Even Elvis said to call the police. Although,
my goodness.
Oh yeah, he knowing that he had just crashed while drunk, he tried to get rid of the bottle of champagne and tried to throw it out the window, the driver's window.
Funny.
Forgetting that the driver's window was still closed.
That's too funny, especially with the gun on his dashboard.
Yeah. You know, I don't know that I'd ever want to call drunk driving and loaded weapons funny, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, no, funny, not funny, kind of. You know, not yeah. Anything else?
No, it's just he had much more of a influential and varied impact in the world of music than I had realized.
Right.
He didn't just appear with the greats. He was a influence and star.
He was an influencer before there were influencers. Right.
That's a good way of putting it. That's a good way of putting it. So,
Mhm.
so anything more on Jerry Lee Lewis?
No, we move on to Aaron Carter, only 34 years old. He was a child star. I believe that he had lots of issues with drug abuse, but I believe he was straightening himself out. He was a teen pop singer in the late teen 90s. He began performing at 7 years old in his brother's group. That would be Nick from the Backstreet Boys. Yeah.
By the way, did you notice in our first three, Leslie Jordan, Jerry Lee Lewis, Aaron Carter all had extensive issues with alcohol and drugs?
Yep. And it's not, I have a good way of putting them in order, don't I, Mark?
I'm sure you do.
So I didn't know that he had his, like he was solo. I knew he acted on TV, but I didn't know he had a little bit of a solo career. So in the article that I read, he released a self-titled debut album in 1997. He was only 9 years old, and it sold over 1 million copies worldwide. He did appear. I do recall he was in the Broadway musical Seussical. I wanted to see that, and I didn't get to. And he was also in the off-Broadway. I can't talk. He was in the off-Broadway musical The Fantastics. Hello, everybody. In 2014, he released a single featuring rapper Pat Solo, who I don't know who that is, but apparently the song was called Oh We.
The way you walk, you stop the clock.
Do you know anything about this song?
No.
I'm a little surprised. We didn't do rap on our radio station, so thank goodness for that. So I found this to be a very unusual crossover.
I was kind of surprised.
We were just talking about crossing over, right? With Jerry Lee being in different facets of the genres. I had no idea he did rap.
I was kind of surprised that with his background with drugs and alcohol at such a young age, and I don't think he ever really broke free of it. I was surprised he had the discipline to do a Broadway musical, which, I mean, I can't imagine what it's like appearing 8 shows a week, doing this, you know, and having to memorize your lines. I mean, if you're a singer performer, you can go off book, so to speak, you know, to some degree during your shows, change the order of your songs. It's not unheard of for somebody to forget the lyrics of their own songs and get past it. That's not quite as easy when you're doing a show like The Fantastics or Seussical, especially since he had the starring role in The Fantastics. So I was surprised he was able to pull that off with his issues.
Here's this was an interesting factoid that I read. His 5th studio album, also titled Love, was released in 2018, and his 6th and final album, Blacklisted, was released 2 days after his death. That's kind of like getting mail from somebody that, like, after they died, you get a letter from them.
Yeah. Now, I see he also did Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, I mentioned.
And I was kind of almost think that's like not a death blow, but that's an acknowledgement that your career is not going where you want it to
Oh yeah,
go.
no, that's definitely for people who are looking to boost a career or, yeah.
Yeah, so now people are fond to look, okay, he was a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old star. I mean, he was a star and a celebrity. And then they say,
Preteen.
well,
Yeah, he preteen, he was the Teen Beat,
but
the
they
Teen
say
Beat
not a surprise.
magazine.
And Nickelodeon, of
Mhm.
course, played a major
Yes,
role. I think
right.
probably the Disney Channel.
Right. Mhm.
But they say, then people are kind of, when they learn that a young celebrity has drug and alcohol problem, they
Mhm.
say, oh, that goes hand in hand, or
Yeah, no, I mean it's more of a problem than it should be, but I don't think it's quite as
but you had like the cast of Different Strokes, almost all of
yeah,
them.
that was horrible.
Right. So now, is there truly an issue where children's celebrities, children's stars have greater problems with drugs and alcohol? Or is it when a child star like a Lindsay Lohan, like
I think it just is brought out more because they were
right,
in the public eye. Absolutely.
exactly. A, they're in the public eye, so when they do have that issue, we know about it. And B,
Mhm.
the one thing that celebrity will play a role in is, well, they also have the money. So they do
Right.
have the money and access to drugs if they have and alcohol, if they have the predisposition, the addictive persona. So they can get their vice.
Mhm.
But I don't tend to, I mean, for every Aaron Carter, there's a Jason Bateman. Jason Bateman was a child star,
Mhm.
and there's never been any kind of link that I know of to him and issues.
Same thing with his sister, Justine Bateman, never had issues.
Right. And there are many, many others that you could point to.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
Valerie, there's Valerie Bertinelli, and what was her sister on One Day at a Time?
Oh,
Daughter of the Beach Boys,
the Mama and the Papa's kid.
Mom and the Papa, right? Mackenzie Phillips.
There you go.
So
And you know what the thing is, that it was her own father that got her hooked, and then it was John who kicked it, and then helped her kick it. So he both got her hooked and then helped her break it.
So you probably agree with me. It seems that it's not that childhood celebrity and drugs go hand in hand. It's just that we hear about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Anything else on Aaron Carter?
We can mark the day and time that we agreed, right, Mark?
We can mark the day and time that you got one right.
You're so obnoxious.
You still have to send me the link to Designing Women on
I'll send you the article if I bookmarked it. I'll send you the
Leslie
article.
Jordan. Yeah.
It was there. It was there.
But like I said, I thought he was there and I couldn't find it. But anyway, that brings us to Julie Powell. I think you know a lot more about her than I do.
You know what?
I'd never heard of her.
Okay, so the only reason that I know about her is because I am a very big Meryl Streep fan, and there was a movie some years out, and my sister and I, who don't really have the same taste in that sort of entertainment, agreed. We both like to cook. Mom was a very big Julia Child fan, so we both like Julia Child, and then Meryl Streep played Julia Child. And this movie was about a woman named Julie who decided she was a writer and she couldn't get off the ground writing. So what she did was she got the book, like a very famous book by Julia Child, and it's called Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And then she decided she would cook every single recipe in there, and then she blogged about it. And she ended up writing something called the Julia Project. Well, this ended up becoming a movie, which is where Meryl Streep comes along. So she blogged about the recipe, how easy it was, how difficult it was, along with things that happened in her everyday life.
I forgot to tell you. Do you know what Annabelle's doing now? Sarah told me. A blog.
Of what?
What do you mean, of what? A blog of Annabelle. Of every thought that passes through her brain, her stupid, vapid, insipid... I could write a blog. I have thoughts.
And you're a writer, which is more than I can say for Annabelle.
If only that were true.
You wrote a novel.
Have a novel. And no one wanted to publish it. You're not a writer unless someone publishes you.
See, that's what's so great about blogs. You don't have to be published. You can just go online, press enter, and there it is, out there.
What would I write a blog about? You're an editor. Tell me.
Why don't you write about how much you love Queens?
A short blog.
Okay. Write about your job.
If I wrote a blog about my job and anyone at work ever read it, I mean, hello.
This is good. Mm-hmm. This is really
On top of
good.
which, the whole idea of writing a blog is to get away from what I do all day. The way that cooking is a way that I get away from what I do all day.
So, write a blog about cooking.
I'm not a real cook like Julia Child or Mario Batali.
Julia Child wasn't always Julia Child.
If I really wanted to learn to cook, I could just cook my way through Julia Child's cookbook. I could blog about that. I have a copy. I stole it from my mother last time I was in Texas. When I was 8, my father's boss came to dinner and it was a really big deal, and my mother made bouffe bourguignon. But it wasn't just bouffe bourguignon, it was Julia's bouffe bourguignon. And it was like she was there, like Julia was there, in the room, on our side, like some great, big, good fairy. And everything was going to be all right.
So what happened was they finally were able to, and then it was not easy for her to publish it either until a little company called the Little Brown and Company turned the blog into a book, calling it Julie and Julia, 365 days, 524 recipes, one tiny apartment. And although some critics thought that it lacked literary heft, I'm quoting, it went on to sell more than 1 million copies and became a wonderful movie called Julia and Julia, My Year Cooking Dangerously. It was a very good movie. I loved it.
Julia Childs was not a fan of the book slash blog at
No,
all.
she was not. No, she was not. She was not a fan of the blog in itself. So she had refused to make an appearance in it. But the Julia Project became a popular model for other blogs that was replicated by fans of the cooks Ina Garten, Thomas Keller, Dory Greenspan, and it helped build a very vast modern audience for home cooking on social media that has, created channels like the cooking, what's it called? The Food Network and the Cooking Channel. And all of this was all extended from this particular
Now, here's the thing, by the way, that I found a little difficult to swallow, so to
I knew you
speak,
were going to say that.
was she was about 30-something when she started the blog.
Mm-hmm.
And she claims that until she started this project, when she was 30-something, she had never eaten an egg.
Right.
I find that hard to believe. I don't know how
I've
some
heard other people say it. Yeah, I've heard other people say it. Yeah, and
other people
Julia
said
Child.
that Julie Powell never ate an egg until she was in her 30s.
no,
That's common conversation. You've heard other people say that.
I have heard other people say it, but usually there's an egg allergy for the reason. But she never stated why that she never had eggs.
Yeah, no, it's just.
But it's not the first time that I've heard it.
All right. Anyway, you like to say you know more about her than I do. Is there anything else that we should
No,
talk about? Julie
because
Powell and Over
that's
the Rainbow.
pretty much her
She
claim
died of
to
a heart
fame.
attack at age 49.
Yeah.
Well,
It could come from all that French cooking, which is not
And,
dietetic at all.
and all that cholesterol from all those eggs she started eating when she
Yeah, she made up for lost time.
That could be it.
So we move on to a gentleman who I'd never heard of called Hank Soroyan. He was 75 and he died from complications of multiple, I can't say it, melanoma.
Melanoma. By the way, I want to go back to Aaron Carter for a moment. Who died at 34. He drowned in his bathtub. We didn't really touch on that.
Yeah,
And
I know.
He really
It's
didn't
weird.
say that he overdosed or anything. I have not
What did he
seen
say?
anything. But you know how you're always saying when somebody's 90, but they didn't give a cause of death, and they said they died of being 90.
I know, but that's why I
Aaron
didn't.
Carter's the opposite. When you die
Yeah,
at 34 in your bathtub,
I'll be honest, I didn't include it because sometimes I sometimes don't like your response to things like that. So
What
they
do you
say that he drowned in his bathtub, but they don't say he overdosed. They don't
Yeah.
there's no reason why.
and
he-
like I
maybe
said, when
he
somebody at 90 dies without a disclosed cause, he died of being 90, natural causes. There are no natural causes when he
Right.
died at 34.
Agreed.
I just want to go back
Agreed.
to
But
that.
they didn't go into maybe he slipped on a piece of
Yeah.
soap or they don't say anything. So
Right.
I was like, I'm not gonna say
Okay.
a word.
So going back to Mr. Soroyan at 75, which is what made me
Yes, he
think of-
died from complications of melanoma cancer. Did I say it right that time? He has an interesting background. More
That's
than
what
I
I thought
thought.
made him most noteworthy.
Yeah, he graduated from UC Berkeley with a veterinary degree and began his career as a stunt writer on the Anniversary Game, which was broadcast in San Francisco. Now, I did not know about this show, but being that you are out there,
KGO is
Did
my
you-
station. That's where I worked.
that's what I thought. So you knew about this. So do you have
No.
anything?
I didn't know
so
about
then
the
he
show,
moved on.
he was William he was the nephew of William Soroyan, the great author.
Uh-huh.
And so William Soroyan is this great American writer, and Hank Soroyan, his nephew, writing the Muppet Babies, and
Yeah, so let me get to that. So he that's what he's famous for, but he's a little more than that. He moved on to writing and producing at Dick Clark Productions. So, that's noteworthy. And so it says before going into animation, he worked for Hanna-Barbera and Marvel Productions. So that's all we've gone on and on about those particular companies in past episodes. He was a story editor. Yeah, then we get to the award-winning Muppet Baby team. As a story editor, he was part of the Emmy-winning Muppet Baby team. He composed the music. He wrote 17 episodes for the series, and he serves as an executive in charge of production. He won. Look at my notes. He won for directing. He won an Emmy for directing The Parsley Garden, which was a short story about the uncle you just mentioned, William
by the
Soroyan.
uncle, not about, but by the uncle.
Correct. That he
And
adapted.
it starred
BBC.
Tom Bosley and Adrian Barbeau, so it was
Correct. He
pretty
narrated
high
by James
profile.
Earl Jones. So when I read that, because I'm a big fan of James Earl Jones, and he is quite the voice for narration. And then when I saw Adrian Barbeau, I was intrigued because I don't think I've seen her act in anything other than the TV show Maude. So that
Mhm.
sort of got my attention. Tom Bosley, we all know. Mr. H, right? Mr. C. Cunningham, he was Richie's dad, right? Then he was, yeah, he was in an American, it says he was an American boy in 1930s, Fresno, who wants to build a bench for his mother's garden. So that's interesting. I may go look for that. Other things I learned, he had a great passion for animals, so that's always a check mark in my book. He was an advocate, defender, and caregiver. And then he has additional writing and story credits from the 1980s Dungeons and Dragons series, Fievel's Adventures in the West. I saw that movie. And Trollkin's Rude Dog and the Dweebs, which I never heard of until I read the article. Do you know anything about that?
No, but do you think he lived in the shadow of his famous uncle, or do you think he was a success in his own right?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I think he might have been a more well-known name had it not been for his uncle's talent.
Or maybe it was because of his uncle and his uncle's name that he got the opportunities to begin with.
But that doesn't, I mean, that gets your toe in the door. It doesn't keep you there. So
Sure.
If he didn't have the talent, he wouldn't have survived. He wouldn't have won Emmys. He wouldn't have, you know what I mean? Like,
Again, he did win his Emmy for an adaptation of his uncle's work. So that's not getting out of his uncle's shadow. And then
no, well, you can do one of two things, right? If you're in somebody's shadow, you can try to run from it or embrace it. Sounds to me like he embraced it.
Anything else about Hank Soroyan?
No. Our next person is, I guess you had mentioned it to me as a mentionable, or are we
John
saving this? Yeah.
Well,
are we promoting that for next week, or
no? He's featured this week.
Okay, so I have on here. So the thing, of course, that caught my eye was, he written The Paper Chase. So what I read was that, see, now I only saw the TV version of this. I did not read the book. I did not see the movie. But it said while attending Harvard Law School, he wrote The Paper Chase. And what I thought was interesting was that the whole reason he wrote it was a school assignment required for third-year students. He went outside the law school to find an advisor, William Alfred A., a Harvard English literature professor, who was also a poet and a playwright. Ms. Osborne recalls her father saying that Mr. Alfred was effusive about the first rough draft, but suggested some changes. So she certainly had a hand in the way that the book was laid out. A year after Ms. Osborne's graduation in 1970, Huffington Mifflin published The Paper Chase. Like I just said, the book turned into a movie, and the movie turned into a series. It says it tells the story of an adversarial relationship between a curmudgeonly older law professor, I love that word, curmudgeon, and an industrious first-year student from the Midwest who is trying to survive the cutthroat intellectual world of an elite law school. Now, John Houseman played the part of Professor Kingsfield. I knew that from watching the TV show, but it says he also played the part in the movie.
Right.
Did you read or see any of these modems?
I've seen a couple of episodes of the TV show. If I'm not mistaken, just as an aside, I'm pretty sure John Houseman had next to no acting experience before he took that role, which
is that so? Made
him famous.
All right.
But that's just an aside. Going back to John J. Osborne Jr., in terms of patterns, just like Soroyan, he spent most of his life here in the Bay Area. But also like Soroyan, he was descended from the famous Supreme Court Justice, John Jay. and he was also related to Cornelius Vanderbilt, so he had some pretty good bloodlines. But I thought that was interesting. I guess with the name like John Jay going into law, you have something to live up to.
Right. And then we have
And
the
he
John Jay Law School in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, among others. He
Uh-huh.
did practice. He clerked for the Third Circuit Appeals Court for a judge. He worked as an attorney, but he also continued to write. He wrote episodes of Law and Order. He wrote other books.
Right. All I had was that in my article, it didn't get specific. It just said for the rest of his career, Mr. Osborne would balance writing novels as well as television and film
Right.
scripts with teaching law, even like Kingsfield contract law. So
He wrote an episode of Spencer for Hire, which I loved that show.
I love that show
He
too.
wrote Law and Order, an episode of Law and Order. He wrote 15 of the 54 episodes of Paper Chase. He wrote several other novels. So he balanced
Yeah.
his writing with his practice of law. And anything else about
No, that about covers
that
it.
Osborne?
I do believe we're moving on to Dr. Samuel O. Katz.
That would be
Is that
correct.
correct?
That would be correct.
Here's somebody who I think we both agree should have been somebody more well known that we run into when we're researching these things. Dr. Katz is definitely a candidate for that section of our show. He was a world-renowned virologist and a pediatrician. I did not know what a virologist was before I read this, but it said he was an honors graduate at Dartmouth College and Harvard Medical School. After a medical internship at Beth Israel Hospital, he completed pediatrics residency training at the Massachusetts General Hospital and the Boston Children's Hospital, followed by a research fellowship in virology and infectious disease. Boy, that is a mouthful. So, with his expertise in infectious diseases, that sort of goes along with what attracted us to researching him, which was as one of the inventors of the excuse me, of the
The measles.
the measles vaccine. He became a staff member at Children's Hospital working with Nobel laureate John F. Enders for the
Okay.
next 12 years researching viruses, specifically measles, a disease that at the time killed more than 5 to 6 million children a year globally.
You and I should
they-
be especially grateful, Tim, because the measles vaccine was 100% deemed 100% effective by 1961. So that
Mhm.
absolutely had an impact on your life and my life.
Oh, absolutely.
By the way,
Dr.
speaking of which,
Although
happy
I caught
birthday.
Thank you. Although I did catch the measles. My sister's 3 years older than me. She would go to school, catch whatever was going on, and bring it home to me.
How
So,
old were you when you got the measles?
4?
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, my mother told me stories of how they had to put little white gloves on me to keep me from picking the little marks. So it says Dr. Katz and Enders developed the measles virus vaccine that started out by shortening the life of the virus. The vaccine was tested in national clinics. Excuse me, my allergies today. It was tested in national clinic trials approved by the Food and Drug Administration in 1963 and is now used throughout the world. We also, didn't we touch something to the effect of that some of these, it wiped it out, but it sort of like has a resurgence because they stopped giving the vaccine. Didn't we
Well, not they
touch on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I wonder what he has to say on this whole pushback on vaccines that really hit
Yeah,
the head
especially
with
now.
the whole COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
But even before that, there were communities that were becoming resistant to getting their children vaccinated because of the fake links to autism and things like that,
Right. Right.
pushed by Oprah's guests, who she gave legitimate platforms to. What was her name? Not Jenny Jones. Who's the Playboy centerfold? Who's now on The Mask? Who hosts The Mask? Who's famous?
Never watched that.
She does. She does vaping ads. So this is who to take advice from.
Without a doubt, in my mind, I believe vaccinations triggered Evan's autism. So I think they need to wake up and stop hurting our kids.
But one of the more famous spokespeople.
Not one episode. I don't watch that sort of thing. I'm not interested. But he, in addition to the development of the measles, Dr. Katz worked exclusively on a range of other vaccines, including Vaxia or Vaxchina, used as smallpox vaccine, polio, rubella. And that was interesting because I thought rubella was smallpox or chickenpox, right? Rubella was chickenpox to the mother, right? There's influenza, pertussis, whooping cough. I had that too. Haemophilus influenza B conjugates and HIV. I didn't know he had anything to do with HIV. He served 22 years as the chair of the Duke Department of Pediatrics, mentoring 2 decades of students and residents. He established an exchange program with Oxford University and provided training for annual succession of residents from the American University of Beirut. He was there was a whole lot about that, about how he was very pushing for students of other nationalities to embrace medical careers, and he advocated for them, which was part of this program. In addition to seeing patients and supporting faculty, he expanded his role and advocate for vaccination, experiencing firsthand the ways in which disease affects children living in resource-poor countries, which also has a lot to do with, I sort of didn't include the whole thing about test runs that they had done for the vaccination in Africa and other impoverished countries. He had contributed lifelong advocacy with the United States and around the world. He earned numerous accolades throughout his career, including the inaugural Joseph St. Jean Jr. Leadership Award in '88, 2003 Albert B. Sabin Gold Medal Award by the Sabin Vaccine Institution, and the 2015 Maxwell Findlin Award for Scientific Achievement for his contributions to vaccine discoveries during his career. So
it was Jenny McCarthy who was the lunatic.
Oh, okay. So I don't like her. So it's interesting that he didn't have more of a voice in all of this pushback to the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, like I said, I've been interested in
point there. He certainly had he could have stood side by side with Dr. Fauci, I suppose.
At 90 something, I don't know how much standing he was doing anymore. In any event, let's move on to our last feature this week.
Yeah, it's another cuddly story. I always try to find these things to land on a good note because our topic is a hard one to hear. So this is about a miniature horse, and his name was Equine Officer McGillicuddy. He was 12 years old, and he died as the result of injuries sustained in an accidental fall while he was grazing at his home pasture. Now, we're not really sure. Maybe something scared him, and he reacted to it, and when he backed off it or whatever, maybe he tripped and fell, who knows. But he served as a goodwill ambassador for Central Pennsylvania Police Department, and his responsibilities were for cultivating positive police and community relationships. He volunteered his time at Quarryville Police Foundation events in exchange for
By the way, significant, it has to be mentioned. He wasn't just like a police mascot. He was literally sworn in and given a badge.
Yes, he was.
Now, unfortunately, it was August 2nd, so it was only a few months that he got to enjoy his career as an officer before his accidental death.
Yeah, so he and the kids loved him. So even like when he was not on duty, he was the pet of Maddie, the 6-year-old niece of Quarry Police Foundation board member Kirkland Groves. He actually was scheduled to appear at the parking lot of Quarry Goods Store for the 2022 Extra Give on November 18th at an event hosted by the Quarryville Police Foundation, which is now this year's fundraiser, which will be dedicated to his memory. He inspired lots of smiles wherever he went and never tired of receiving hugs from the kids.
It's kind of nice when police departments make an active effort to reach out to the public like that, especially because, to some degree deserved, to some degree not. Too many officers are being painted with the same brush, but there is definitely community relations issue.
Absolutely. And it gets them out there among the community so that they know there's somebody on their side. It's not just about, worrying if, they're chasing you down for a ticket. You're basically a good citizen. Rest in peace, Officer McGillicuddy, and thank you for your service. I hear you have some promos this week, Mark.
We will be talking about in our next episode. We already know and talk about a theme. Bud Friedman, who is probably one of the most famous people in the world of professional comedy in terms of creating a venue and a stage to make stand-up comic what it is today, as well as Gallagher, the most famous for smashing watermelons on stage, but more than that, are just two of the features that will be on the next episode of Over the Rainbow. Anything that you have to add to that, or
not right now? Wasn't there another gentleman, Fred? What's his name?
There are several. There's a guy.
No, but I wanted to. Well, look, I'm a Yankee
Yankees
fan.
Network that we'll be talking about.
Yeah, I'm a Yankee fan, and so he must be promoted.
We'll be talking about him, but that's assuming we'll do that on the next episode. But that's assuming that we're promised to have a next episode.
Yeah, are we promised a dinner for tomorrow night?
I don't know. Is there anything we should do with our loved ones then?
We should always show them love today because we are not promised that they will be here tomorrow. I guess, though, because you did a promo, it's almost a promise that we'll be here for the next episode of Over the Rainbow.
We better be. Otherwise, Bud Friedman and Gallagher will have died in vain without getting a dinner.
Can't have that.
Well, thank you, Sharon, and look forward to this next one. I look forward to hearing about, was it Fred Hickman? Is that his name?
Yeah.
I look forward to learning about it. At least he was. This has been Over the Rainbow.
He jumped in front of a subway train, and he got slit in the jugular vein. And Eddie, I miss you more than all the others, and I salute